Comparative measuring means that you can draw at a more comfortable scale whilst maintaining accurate proportions. Sight-size drawing sometimes results in creating tiny sketches. Say, for example, you're at a life drawing class and you're some way away from the model and you're trying to measure the distance between the eyes and the chin, and it's literally the length of your pencil tip. What you also might find is that when you're sketching in museums, something like a dinosaur, that a sight-size drawing, if you take the measurements, if you're sitting quite close, means you can't fit the end of the tail in, which I find quite annoying. The answer in these situations is to use a comparative method of measuring. This method involves taking one measurement, typically the length of the head or the height of the head, and then using this as a unit to measure the size of the body and calculate its relation to the other body parts. Materials I used in this tutorial are a colouring pencil, a fine liner, some light grey markers, and I created this drawing in a double-page spread. Sometimes I don't find it necessary to complete an entire underdrawing before adding the tone, so drawings can be approached in different ways. With a proportional measuring rack structuring my sketch, I can navigate my way along the dinosaur's body, sectioning off my focus on the challenge that each body zone represents. Intuitively, I'm going to swap between the fine liner, which is going to work on the linear qualities, and then the light grey brush markers, which I'm going to use for tone just because they're so quick. I'm going to work my way from left to right, from nose to tail, simplifying each item into areas of abstract light and shade before going on to an area I haven't understood. So I go from an area I've understood to new territory. An important note to make if you're going to be using markers in this sketch is that they will stain the other side of the paper. Initially, I held up my arm straight to ensure a consistent unit of measurement. I slid my thumb along the pencil till it was at the tip of the iguana's horny beak, which would have been an ideal tool for tearing vegetation from trees and bushes. The tip of the pencil was at the back of the skull, so then I've got a unit of measurement. I then counted the number of times I could fit this horizontal measurement across the length of the body. Then I guessed at an appropriate transferable head size that would mean I could fit in the entirety of the dinosaur across the double-page spread of the sketchbook, including the final tip of the tail and the toes. Then I counted the distance between the head and the shoulders to be 2 heads, and so forth. Next I created 11 short lines horizontally across the double-page spread, which created a rack of proportions that I could align my body parts to. Starting out with the colouring pencil allowed me to sketch out a very light armature before committing to the indelible fine liner mark. I've broken the iguana down into primary body zones and then worked nose to tail, shape to shape. So I'm looking at each abstract shape and how they fit together. I'm looking out for landmarks such as shoulders, elbows and knees. By working my way down, I broke the subject down into mini challenges. The mini challenge of the head, the mini challenge of the neck, the thorax and so forth. So I wasn't taking on too much at one go. While I'm drawing, I'm always looking for comparative relationships, both horizontally and vertically, to see where things are beneath each other or where they are side to side. So I noticed that the tips of the fingers lie below the first 2 cervical vertebrae. These are the atlas C1 and the axis C2. The atlas allows for the rocking motion of the head and the axis the rotation. They can look a little different from other vertebrae. This is why I think it's worth mentioning them, because they often have a sort of wider shape. You can think of the atlas as the atlas holding up the world. In some species, this can be as wide as the skull. I also noticed that the knees are a similar height to the elbows. When I think of knees, I always look out for the patella, because where there's a patella, there's always a knee. On many animals, I roughly judge the midpoint, like similar to where our hips are. It makes sense that the hips are in the middle to balance the dinosaur. So by measuring the distance from the head to the hips and the hips to the end of the tail, I can kind of get a rough idea of the seesaw effect of the balance of the dinosaur. The iguanodon was a herbivore, able to walk on all fours and also on two legs. It had a large thumb spike at the end of its hand, possibly to ward off predators, and the structures of the muscles inside the head indicates it had a very long tongue. Iguanodons lived in the early Cretaceous 140 to 110 million years ago and incredibly weighed up to about 5 tons.